Good morning.
Good morning, Lloyd.
How are you, Melissa?
I'm good. I'm very good. Kind of sleepy, but good. What about you?
I'm doing okay. These meetings are always a little challenging. I'd certainly rather be meeting in person than remotely, virtually.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And turn up my sound a bit. Everything. You're prepared to share your screen and demo the smart sheet, right?
Already, I went in and fixed the errors that were in there to make sure that it's consistent with the document that you have. And then I already have a form open so that they can see how it would work in practice.
Okay.
The only question I had is if you wanted me to show an APR, like just so that they could see where data is coming from, but that's completely up to you if you wanted it to be that way.
I don't think we need to get into that at this point. If it comes up, we can do that.
Sounds good.
Good morning, Ruby. Ruby, while we're waiting, would you check your schedule to see if you're free to accompany me on a site visit to Project Access on December 15th at 10 a.m.?
Yes, I can move my schedule, a meeting with Colin.
Or you're meeting with Colin at that time?
Yeah, it's just a one-on-one, but I can move that.
Okay.
You said December 15th, 10 a.m.?
Yep, it's yeah, if Colin approves that, and I make it, if it works for Sally Wilson, that's what my plan is. So when I put it on my schedule this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Danielle.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Drew. Good morning, Shantae, Sally. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shay.
All right, Lloyd, do we have quorum?
I defer to Melissa on that.
Let's
We
see.
have met quorum.
Thank you, Melissa. All right, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Shay Kennard, and I will be hosting this particular meeting for us today. Lloyd was not able to attend this particular meeting, so we will go ahead and get this started. So the first thing on the agenda today is to review the minutes that was submitted via email by Lloyd. Did we have any suggestions, edits, or changes that needed to take place on the minutes?
Nothing that I saw, no.
Okay, perfect. Well, if there's no changes to be made, is it okay if we get a motion to approve the September's minutes and a second?
I move to approve September's minutes.
Thank you so much. So we have Drew as the first on that. Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second this. This is Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy. You are awesome. You guys are great. So thank you. That's handled. That's easy. Okay. So the next on our agenda then, moving right along, is the approval of plan to obtain date on all COC projects for periodic review. And I do believe Lloyd may have some information for us, but we would need to move to a vote on this today if possible. Lloyd, did you have any additional information you want to share on this?
Just a clarification and a question. Are you also planning to approve the October minutes? I understand. And also you received a motion and a second, but we need the committee's approval of the minutes as well before we go too fast, get ahead of ourselves.
Gotcha. So he already sent out the copy of the October's meeting? Because I know we were waiting to update the names on it, and then I did get the names last night and I was able to update it. So it wasn't enough time to review it, but if
Okay.
everyone has reviewed it,
Well,
by all means.
we can postpone that till the December meeting then. But I believe you do want to get a approval of the motion to approve the September minutes, which has not yet
Gotcha.
been completed.
All right. Thank you, Lloyd. If everyone can go to the chat with their approval. Thank you. Or disapproval. Or abstain. Thank you, Danielle. Okay. All right. Has everyone entered their vote? Oh, let me make sure I put mine in too. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Shay. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll talk a little bit further. Hopefully the committee is prepared to approve the plan to have projects submit performance data for the fiscal, for the year that ended September 30th, 2022. I'm still looking to get my screen. Here we go. All right, so there's two documents we want to review. I reviewed this with the committee at the October meeting. I believe this document basically explains how the various measures for the six project types: street outreach, emergency shelter for families, and emergency shelter for singles, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing are calculated. And so our plan would be that with the committee's approval, we would send a communication to all of our projects that contribute to or part of the homeless housing system, and do an orientation reviewing this tool, which basically explains what the standards or benchmarks are as listed in or described in column A and column B of this document, and then tells them where on the continuum of care annual performance report in the homeless management information system they would look to find the data, as in column C tells them that, then provides information as needed in columns D and E to find the numbers, get the numbers, and then have the calculation and the result in column F. Now, so this document is basically an explanatory document. Gratefully, our coordinator has developed a Smartsheet tool that is web-based, and she's going to demo that here shortly. That with the committee's approval, we would then explain to the projects how they can use the Smartsheet to actually enter the data, as well as a copy of the annual performance report or APR that would allow us to verify the accuracy of any of the results that they are entering into the Smartsheet. So again, these hopefully committee members are familiar with these various performance measures. There's again, four street outreach projects, 3, I believe, for each project type under emergency shelter, basically really encouraging them to focus on exiting people as quickly as possible to housing, and really encouraging them to focus on that. And then for transitional housing projects, since they typically have people for up to 2 years, have several more measures, 5 measures, inviting them to take a more comprehensive view of how they're helping get people ready to maintain housing once they get back into it. Rapid rehousing projects also have, let's see, four, and permanent supportive housing projects again would have 5 measures that we are evaluating. Are there any questions before I stop sharing this screen and invite Melissa, our coordinator, to share the Smartsheet? Or any questions about the information on this?
Lloyd,
Yes, Tracy.
yeah, yes, is this similar to, it looks, some of the benchmarks look similar to the other performance measure tool that's used earlier in the winter/spring as a part of the preliminary process for projects being considered for funding. But the projects are basically running a report in HMIS. And you said the time frame is going to be from maybe August 1st to September 30th, or what is the time frame for the information?
Yeah, so our proposal, and I believe we talked about this in at our last meeting, was that the committee would expect projects to provide this information twice annually via the Smartsheet. Once for the 6-month period ending March 31st, and we would look to have set a deadline for when the smart sheet would be completed with that. Probably that would take place in the April through June period. And then for the annual period, for the July 1, or excuse me, for the October 1 through September 30th federal fiscal year, would look to have that project ordinarily probably completed by the end of November. This year, we're getting a late start since we're just starting this implementation. But I think we'd look to try to get projects oriented to this process by the end of November. I've tentatively put a orientation date on my calendar for the Tuesday, I believe, before Thanksgiving, and we could set a deadline for projects to provide the information in the smart sheet, either December 15th or perhaps December 31st, and then have the committee review the data. So this would be in addition to the well, it would be for COC funded projects. It would be in addition to that performance reporting, which would essentially mean that those projects are reporting performance quarterly. The option, which we could talk about now or later, would be to, since the COC funded rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing projects are already reporting performance twice annually, if the committee prefers, we could exempt those projects from participating in this performance reporting process. Does that address your question, Tracy? Maybe I gave you too much information.
No, never too much information. But you're saying you're projecting the deadline for the 12-month period ending September 30th by possibly December 15th or December 30th.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, for this first time, and then, you know, in 2023, hopefully we would probably have it earlier, probably have it done since the 12-month period ends September 30th, either asking them to maybe submit it by either October 31st or November 15th, November 30th, somewhere in that time frame. But that would be up to the committee to decide. Certainly the department can make a recommendation, but the committee makes those decisions.
Lloyd, I did have a question. So
Yes.
when we were doing the scoring portion, you see in column C where it tells us about the tables and stuff.
Mhm.
If the applicant is not putting that information in that particular source, maybe it's somewhere else, do we count against them, or it should typically be within that table itself? And if it's not, then that's just the answer that we go with?
Well, I mean, there should be information in there if projects are using the HMIS or an HMIS comparable database. Now there are occasionally, I mean, one of the things for street outreach projects, since we've got that on the screen, is that they need to be recording contacts that they make with people on the streets in the HMIS for people, and then based on the contacts and the information they submit, tables 9A and 9B calculates the percentage of contacts that are actually enrolled in the project. And but there is a calculation, and actually I think automatically there is a percentage under table 9B that calculates the percentage of people that were contacted that are enrolled. I don't, now, if, you know, if a project, for example, if a project doesn't have anybody who exits during the period, right, table 23C would have all zeros. And, you know, we would verify, you know, that's accurate, and that would not be held against a project if they're, you know, everybody's still, they haven't exited anybody. But on the other hand, you know, when you're looking at emergency shelter or rapid rehousing or transitional housing, we're looking at, you know, what if you have 100 people enrolled in a emergency shelter project and nobody has exited, that would negatively impact, right, the length of stay. So there'd be some questions there as to what kind of performance the project is generating. And I mean, I think you raise kind of a good question, that at least a thought around, you know, the overall performance of a project is taking all of these various measures into consideration for the particular project, right? It's not kind of looking at all of them together rather than just each one in isolation.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
All right. If there are no questions about this kind of these instructions, I'm going to stop sharing and allow Melissa to share her screen and demo the smart sheet that she has. Shay, I see Sally has a question if you want to recognize her.
Of course, Sally, please, welcome. If you have your question, go ahead.
Sure. Just wanted to confirm, I think I understand this, but that you have here created a tool to allow that is based on benchmarks that have already been identified.
Correct.
So the benchmarks themselves have been approved, and this is simply where projects would get their data from.
Right. The projects would get their data from the annual performance report in the HMIS and enter it into the tool that Melissa is preparing to demonstrate.
And I guess this may be something that gets addressed more in the training implementation phase, but sometimes there are, sometimes if an entity might run multiple emergency shelter programs or multiple rapid rehousing programs, if you separate out the performance measures by projects, it might not, be, a great representation of client outcomes. So I don't know if there's any opportunity to talk about sort of combining projects in reporting the performance measures.
At this point, I think the understanding we have from the committee is that projects are reporting by the performance of individual projects rather than summarizing the performance of projects individually.
Is that something, I'm not a member of the committee, but Shay, is that something that the committee could consider? I'm not sure if that exact question has been was considered.
Hey, Sally, I don't believe it was considered. I don't remember that question being asked, but I'm definitely happy to, open up the floor for that discussion. I would ask though, so just to make sure I understand your question. So if they're a group that have multiple entities that they're using and we score them individually, it may not look good individually is what you're saying. So you would rather have a group scoring. But on the flip side of that, I guess my question would be if those individual groups, even if they're all, combined together at some point, but if those individual groups are scored, it kind of gives them the areas of opportunity of improvement, I would think. So, you know, it's definitely up to the board what they would like to do. You know, what are your thoughts, everyone?
Do you want me to give you, would it help if I sort of give you a concrete example?
Sure.
Just for discussion
Yeah.
purposes. So for example, you know, and this sort of is sort of moot going forward, but if we were looking at emergency shelter projects, you know, sort of during COVID, there's been a lot of movement between, we had, you know, one emergency shelter project at Carolina Duke that shut down, and then the clients moved to extended stay. We had a COVID shelter where people would move out of one emergency shelter into the COVID emergency shelter, back into an emergency shelter again. And so if you're sort of looking at emergency shelter exits, you know, there's sort of some context around some of the information that you really would have no control over impacting those exits. Or another example might be if you have like a rapid rehousing program and basically the funding source changes, you're sort of required to change the program itself, but it's the same client, it's the same program, it's just the funding source, you know, makes you change the program. And then some of the information, again, you know, and I'm all about, you know, performance benchmarks. It's just, you know, you know, so I love having benchmarks.
I also want to be fair. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And I think that maybe more discussion could go around that, and maybe, you know, within this vote, depending on what we would like to do, maybe that could be someone on the board, you know, can take Sally's comments and make a suggestion. By all means, we could definitely do that. I do believe Lloyd has like another presentation to pull up to add more information to that. So what we could do is once that presentation is over, we can kind of take our thoughts and chat about it. And if anyone would like to open up some type of suggestion on the behalf of Sally, that would be awesome. And I see Tracy has a comment too. And Sally, hopefully you're okay with that. Just giving everybody the opportunity to get all information and then make that suggestion on your behalf.
Yep, sounds perfect.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, and Tracy?
Yeah, just to follow up with that, given that we would do two, you know, we're asking organizations to submit two performance reports based on the information that's entered into the HMIS to be able to share at the, you know, the higher level in terms of overall performance of projects that are being funded through the COC. How is that information being used to for the organizations? I mean, are once the information is gathered, especially beyond the funding decision around that, are we sharing information back with organizations to see where, if there are areas or points where there may be weaknesses in their programs or projects that may need more support or technical assistance? Are we providing that type of feedback given the report, or is it just documentation of the overall performance of the projects? So I'm kind of getting into where I guess Sally is leading regarding some of this, because even if we were to combine projects, or with her example, if someone's leaving one emergency shelter going into the other, I would like to think that this information is being recorded through HMIS, that while they may be leaving and exiting one project, if it's still emergency shelter, if the project falls in an emergency shelter, they would be re-entering another update about that in the system that would be able to capture that person's exit and entry into another destination, but still fall under the category of emergency housing.
I love that. That's a great point. Lloyd, did you want to address that?
I think one of the advantages of organizations and projects themselves entering the data into the Smartsheet is that it forces them to look at what their performance is, and hopefully based on that they would look at you know, how they are performing, hopefully well across the board, and they can continue to look at that, or if there are weak areas, they can perhaps consider how they could strengthen their program and to improve performance in particular, particularly when they are not meeting the COC's benchmarks. Now, it's up to the committee to decide, based on the performance, how we want to support projects in improving performance. I think certainly at the COC lead agency level, we're open to try to, provide technical assistance or direct organizations to efforts to, webinars and other resources that could help them improve performance. And Shantae has a question. I see has
Shantae?
raised her hand.
Yeah, so I'm not completely opposed to what Sally's suggestion, or at least having a discussion about it, but I'm just wondering if, for instance, if we wanted to group rapid rehousing projects together, does HMIS have that capability? Because I'm just thinking about the overall it would take for the person providing this information. How much work would that be to group that together if HMIS doesn't have the capability to group multiple projects together?
The HMIS does have the capability of grouping projects together in what are called reporting groups. I think it would be a question for our for the data center as to I think organizations have made requests to group projects together.
I will say, Shante, that I did ask for a reporting group to combine my rapid rehousing programs, and they set it up for me like right away. I just haven't quite figured out how to run the report. I guess I should have done that before this meeting.
Okay, I was just checking.
We can certainly help you with that, Sally.
So what it
Right.
sounds like is that we may need to, number one, understand how to do the reporting groups. But number two, also in this discussion, I would think that we want to confirm that there is a way on the scorecards or in the scoring aspect that if they are grouped together, is there some type of grace that we give them, or it's just individually, period, and your score is your score? Do we add those three scores together to help them with one group score, or how does that work, to kind of piggyback off of Sally and Tracy?
I think since this is a new process, I think one suggestion that comes to mind for me would be that we invite organizations, if they wish, to submit performance for each individual project, and then also submit the scoring for a reporting group, because there could be opportunities to analyze the information that the organization presents, and look at, okay, if the reporting group is sharing one performance, and the individual project's performance doesn't line up with that, it again would be offer opportunities to try to determine exactly what's happening at the individual project level. In a summary report for a reporting group may not provide all of the information that the committee desires either. But I would again want to ask the committee to allow Melissa to share the screen and show the smart sheet, so that the committee can make a decision about moving forward with this effort.
All right, if there's no more questions, by all means, take the floor.
Hey everyone, so I'm just gonna share this really quickly. Okay, so I in Smartsheets I was able to kind of create like a dashboard for all of these performance measures, and so that everything is in one place, because I do understand that there are some providers who participate in more than one project type. So I wanted everything to just be in one place so that a provider could easily find all of the forms that they would need to submit their data, but also be able to find the corresponding reports, because we don't want you to just submit your data and then not see where that's getting filtered into or anything like that. So you would be able to access the full report to actually see where your data lines up with your other projects, or with other providers who are engaging in similar projects. So I'm going to give an example of what this form would look like. So if you're a provider and you are providing a permanent supportive housing project, you would click on that form, and it would open up and look like this. So you would pull your annual performance report from the HMIS system, and then start putting in the data as it's requested on the form. So it's going to ask for your submission date. So that is the date that you are actually completing the form. It's going to ask for the data export date. So this is the date that you actually took the data from HMIS, from your annual report. And then it's going to ask
Melissa-
for your organization name. Yes.
Excuse me, Melissa, would you enlarge the screen? So at least for me, it's really not legible yet.
Yeah, me
1
too.
second. Is that
My
better?
glasses aren't glassing. Okay,
One
thank you.
more time, please.
No worries. Is that good?
That's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. So then, yeah, so once you open up the form, it's going to ask you for the submission date, the data export date from HMIS, and then you're going to put your organization name. So just for test purposes, I put City of Durham Community Development. My project name, I know this is supposed to be a permanent supportive housing project, but I just put test in there for this demo. And then it's going to, when it starts asking you for the performance measures, it's going to tell you exactly where you can find the data that you need to input on that APR from HMIS. So it'll tell you the table, which in this case, it would be 5A, and what the data should be that you're inputting. So let's say I look at my APR and I see the number 10 in table 5A 23C, and I'm going to put that right there in my form. And then for the denominator, for the next same measure, I would go ahead and look in my APR. And again, I'm going to look at what's been given to me as guidance for what table to find this information in, and I'll input that in there as well. And then I would just do the same thing for each measure. So you don't necessarily have to go off of the reference document that Lloyd has, because the form will tell you exactly where you need to go, but context is very important. So I would recommend that you review the reference document that Lloyd gave, just in case you do want more information about what each of these measures is asking for. But the form itself will tell you exactly where to go in the APR to find the data that you need to put into the form. So then once you've gone through each individual measure and added the data from your APR report, you're going to go to the bottom of the form, and it's going to ask you to provide a PDF link. And this is just because we want to be able to have your reference document. So if you pulled an APR for your permanent supportive housing project, we would like it if you could attach that document into the form so that we can reference the data that you've put in, just to make sure that everything's accurate. We're all human and mistakes can happen. So this will allow us to have an easy way to find the data that you are using to fill out your form. And then once you do fill out your form and then put your reference document in, you can ask that Smartsheet send you a copy of your responses, press submit, and that's it. You'll get an email of all of your responses so that you can have a record of, first of all, hey, Lloyd, Melissa, I submitted my data. Can you just confirm that you see it? And then that's good. You have an email that is confirming that you've submitted your data. And now if you actually wanted to be able to see what this data looks like once it filters into a report, you would just go to the corresponding project report, which is on the dashboard as well. And there it is. There is the data that I just put in. You'll also see if it's meeting the percentage that you're supposed to meet for that measure. And if you're unsure of what the benchmark is, that is where Lloyd's reference document will come into play. So it'll be linked right in the dashboard as well, the reference document for all of the performance benchmarks. But that way, everyone will have access to, first of all, the report that includes their data that you input into your form. And I know that there was a question about, like, can we, if we're a provider who gives, multiple emergency shelter projects or something like that, you can technically see all of your projects on the form. So if you've submitted a form for each of your emergency shelter projects or each of your permanent supportive housing projects, they're all going to filter into the same report. So it won't be like the data that you input is going to stand alone on its own. It's going to be filter into a report that includes all of the data for all of the emergency shelter projects that have submitted their data. And then I know that there was also discussion about, because we're a public entity, we have to make sure that we're making this data public. So I think Lloyd was going to talk more with you guys too about what that would look like and what options are available. But we are able to export these reports into Excel sheets, and I can clean them up and make them publicly available if that is what the committee decides to do.
Thank you so much. Did anyone have any questions? I believe I see Tracy's hand.
Yes. Thanks, Melissa. This is really good. And I think it looks very user-friendly on the smart sheet. I know with any process, it's always a little unnerving when you go from being used to one form asking for information to using another. And I think this will be the first time we're actually utilizing the smart sheet. And so from what I'm gathering, the information that we're using, the APR information to fill out the actual smart sheet, will this information be completed through or transposed to the actual performance measure form, or is it we would still have to duplicate the same information on that form?
So you would not, I believe from Lloyd and I's discussion, like you would not be asked to actually fill out that reference document. It's
Correct.
just, it's a reference document for you to, if you wanted to see the full
Okay.
benchmarks for those different performance measures. And if you just wanted to get a little bit more information than what the smart sheet can provide, then we'll always make sure that you have access to the reference document, but you wouldn't be asked to complete that document and complete the smart sheet. You would only be asked to complete the form on smart sheets for each of the projects.
Okay. And so
and
it
submit that
automatically,
data.
so it automatically populates and calculates that information for you once you're, like, for instance, when you were given the example, like it's specifically going to like a data point in the APR, like column 5A, row 2. You
Right.
would be entering that information for that specific question. In the numerator, they're asking the same question and where to locate that information in the APR, and it just automatically would calculate it based on how the other form is laid out.
Right, exactly. And then
Okay.
rather than each individual provider having to calculate their own data from the numerator and denominator, smart sheets will just automatically do that in the report. So it does take away at least some of the work that providers would have had to do to get all of their performance data. And all you'll have to do is complete the form instead of having to actually calculate it by hand on the reference document.
Well, I think this is going to be very user-friendly. Math is not my forte. And I think when the other form you're having to round up and go, wait a minute, is that a 0.5 or more? So I think the smart sheet really does give you a little bit more confidence in being able to identify where that data is coming from based on your AP or the report you're running out of HMIS. and also being able to accurately calculate that for you. So I think this is going to be a really user-friendly process. Again, it's always a little unnerving when you kind of go from using one form to another, but
Right.
from based on your demonstration, I'm kind of very, you've kind of set me at a better ease at accepting this is a better way and probably a more consistent way to make sure all the data calculations are more accurate in doing it this way. So thank you.
No problem. I appreciate the feedback. We'll also, by the way, give a way more detailed and demonstrative training to all of our providers. So we wouldn't expect them to just, here's the dashboard, figure it out. We'll make sure to provide some sort of training and orientation to what this process would look like and offer support if there are any issues or if anyone's having any problems getting their APRs or anything like that. We will be there every step of the way to make sure that they have the support they need to submit their data.
Okay, do we have any other questions, feedback, comments? All right, Lloyd, did you have any additional comments you wanted to add to Melissa's presentation? This looks amazing and it looks a lot more easier to put the information in than what was previously provided. So this is awesome.
No, I think we're looking for approval from the committee to begin a process of requesting performance data from all of the projects that are using the HMIS, as well as our HMIS comparable database projects. At least at this point, getting that information into the Smartsheet website that Melissa has demoed for the committee, and I think getting that completed for the federal fiscal year that ended September 30th, 2022. And I think that the committee, at least in hopefully January, February, can review the information and make decisions as to exactly how we want to communicate with the COC and the individual projects about the information that has been submitted. So we're looking for the committee's approval to move forward with orienting our projects to the performance measures further, as well as orienting them to using the Smartsheet to enter their performance data by the end of the year.
All right, so at this time, we would like to see if anyone would like to have a motion to be made to implement this new process using the Smartsheet. We've had a lot of discussion today surrounding group projects and what that would look like, but I do believe that what was presented by Melissa kind of shows up, Melissa, she kind of shows us that the group project scoring will still be available. So hopefully that took care of some concerns that we had. So if anyone would like to make a motion to approve this, by all means, the floor is open. It looks like Chris Tonez has made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I think
I'll
Sally
second.
had her hand up. Sally, did you
Oh,
have another question?
I'm sorry, Sally?
I guess I just wanted to clarify when Melissa said that I wasn't sure I quite heard it the same way, that there was a group reporting option. So maybe that's a question for Melissa. I mean, I heard you say that all of I guess what I heard was that all of the data will be in one place that we could access. But I guess I didn't hear that you were combining data. And maybe I just that.
Right. So I'm not necessarily going to be combining data. I think that there are discussions about in the future. Right now, we're just focused on we need to get the data first. And then once we have the data, I think there are discussions about potentially working on being able to display the different data points by project type rather than each provider and all of their different projects for that project type. So that's kind of like what you're talking about combining data, but that's something that we're talking about a little further down the line. But right now, I think the major focus is let's get the data from all of our providers so that we can start seeing if they're meeting these performance benchmarks and what TA can be provided, to help them meet performance benchmarks if they are falling just below. But all of the data, once it's submitted on the smart sheet, will be available on one report. So let's say like if Project Access, for example, wanted to, how are all of our emergency shelter projects performing? You could pull the same report from the smart sheet dashboard and focus specifically on your projects and group them all together and see how they're performing overall, rather than just, one form that you submitted for one
Right, and I
project.
think, yeah, so I think I understand that, and I'm not obviously the smart sheet is new to me, but I think what happens is if you say we have like 3 rapid rehousing projects, and we can sort of look, it sounds like through the smart sheet thing, we can look and compare how they're doing to one another, and we could, sort of combine the information. But I think what happens in HMIS, if you combine them within HMIS as a reporting group, then you have a non-duplication of individuals. So that would be, a better reflection of sort of what I'm asking for than if I was to take the 3 rapid rehousing programs and combine the data itself, because then you would not have non-duplication of individuals.
Let me add to Melissa's comments. I would say at this point, with the committee's approval, we would have an expectation that that the individual projects submit their data, and then if organizations wish to submit data as well as a reporting group, that they are welcome to do that as well. The reporting group may help provide greater context for how the individual projects are performing, and organizations that wish to submit a reporting group report in addition to the individual project reports could do so. But at this point, I think our recommendation is that the committee also have an expectation that the individual project reports are submitted.
I mean, if that were possible, I mean, that would be amazing if we have the opportunity to do a reporting group, should we wish, in addition to the individual.
We're certainly open to that.
Okay, well, I'll second the motion that was made by Chris to implement the new process. But also a caveat to that, with this new implementation process, looks as if we will be kind of testing the strategy to see whether or not it needs to be tweaked in any way in the future, because it is a new process for us. We're looking at data from a different lens. So is that also to be understood, Lloyd, as we move forward with this? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So we'll open the vote up to the chat. We do have a motion to implement the new process. The motion was originally given by Chris and second by Tracy. So if everyone could go to the chat, if you approve, deny, or abstain, excuse me. All right, so Lloyd, is that a pass and vote? Did we get everyone?
I think Melissa tracks that. Melissa, are we good?
Yes, sorry. The motion should pass with the number of votes that we have.
Right, perfect. I do believe that I am going to also add a note here that, we do want to open up some discussion in the future surrounding some of Sally comments as well as Tracy. So we'll definitely put that down to open up for a later topic if that's okay for everyone. All right, so the next topic of discussion we have. See, here is the update on the Cross COC Housing First evaluation of the COC funded permanent housing projects. Lloyd, floor is yours.
Yeah, just briefly, really encourage all of the members of the committee to participate on a Housing First implementation or evaluation committee. I know some of you have already made a commitment. If you've not yet done so, feel free to participate and let us know. We'll be sending out a further communication to the entire COC about the process and inviting other COC members to participate on an evaluation team as well. We're currently working with HUD TA providers to do an orientation to the Housing First assessment tool that we'll be using throughout the CO for this process. Again, our timeline is to get volunteers committed by the end of November and to form our teams and to complete training of the teams in December. And forming the teams then hopefully would be done by early January, and the team assignments would come out in early January, and team leads identified, and the team leads would have minor responsibilities to kind of convene the individual teams. The teams will be composed of at least 3 people, potentially, depending on the number of volunteers we actually have participating in the process. Could be 4 to a maximum of 5 people on any one team, again, depending on how many volunteers participate. And then they would be, the team lead would take responsibility as well for coordinating scheduling of team meetings, as well as scheduling site visits to organization and project in a neighboring COC. And we're envisioning that the evaluation process itself would be happening in January and February and be completed by the end of February 2023. And with the Housing First assessment tool has a summary spreadsheet within it that summarizes the overall scoring of the project on Housing First implementation. And so the report that is provided to the COC as well as to the individual project and organizational leadership would not need to be more than the Housing First assessment tool itself. So thanks to those who have expressed a willingness already to participate. We are looking to have our individual projects at Housing for New Hope and Urban Ministries and Alliance, the COC funded projects also work to form teams. And I think it's a great opportunity really to learn more about how other projects and other organizations are implementing COC funded projects. We're going to do our best to have teams, representatives of projects that are implementing rapid rehousing in the Durham COC, visit a rapid rehousing project, for example, in Wake County or Orange County, to explore how they're implementing rapid rehousing and to evaluate that. So hopefully there'll be some good cross COC learning that is taking place, as well as providing hopefully some good information to organizations as to how well they're implementing Housing First.
Do we have any questions?
I have a question, Laura. This will be a combination of in-person as well as virtual, or is it a hybrid of both? How will that be actually done?
Yeah, the hybrid work, I think, is going to be primarily reviewing project policies and procedures, which can be done kind of in a hybrid meeting, but we are going to be recommending on-site in-person meetings. You know, if there's particular challenges with that, there may be exceptions that would allow virtual meetings, but we think that as the pandemic has become endemic in our numbers of cases continue to decline, that it should be possible to safely conduct in-person meetings across the 3 COCs. And that's our recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And Laura, did you need any type of vote on that?
Not at this time. Nope. We're good.
Okay, perfect. All right, moving right along. It looks like we have suggested updates for 2023 evaluation tool
Yep.
for the
Yep.
COC.
Yep. Let me share my screen, and I've got, let's see, where is that screen? Here we go. I believe, I'm not sure this was sent out ahead of time, but we'll send it out to the committee certainly after the meeting. You may recall that we invited suggestions from the committee at our last meeting as to how we can update and improve the tool for the 2023 semi-annual competition and evaluation of our COC funded projects. We've got, okay. Hopefully this is familiar to people. There's several recommendations we are making. I've discussed them at least with the committee chair, Jonathan Crooms. And there's several questions, would like some input from the committee today, and in anticipation of the committee's meeting in December, where we would be asking the committee to approve of final version of the tool. There's not a whole lot being changed under component 1, at least we're not at this point deleting anything. We are proposing to add under let's get to the right point. Can people read this? Might be too small to read, so I may need to read it to you, but I can also can somebody, is the screen legible?
Not really.
Okay, let me see. I can.
While you're working on that, I did have a question. So could Sally's suggestion for the scoring for group projects, is that something that could fall in under the suggestions that we're looking for change for next year?
Not for this particular tool, but I think in our presentations to the COC and the projects, we will offer people an opportunity to both submit the data about them, individual projects, as well as reporting groups if they wish to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to try to zoom in, and I'm going to. Is that better?
Maybe a little too big.
Little too big? Okay. Just went from, I think, 100 to 200. So let me go down to 148. How's that? Any better?
Yes.
Okay. So one question we are inviting the committee to consider adding is not simply looking at the percentage of people that have a non-cash benefit at exit, but question 6C, as it's currently numbered at least, would look at the percentage of people that had a non-cash benefit at entry and compare that to the percentage that had it at exit or at the at annual assessment. And so question 6C looks at the increase, and I put that in bold, the increase in the percentage of adult participants who had a non-cash benefit at project start and then had it at project exit or the annual assessment. So for example, you know, I think in the past, we've simply given organizations credit if for example, they've had 75% of people exiting the project with a non-cash benefit. And that's good. But if the project had 75% of the people entering with a non-cash benefit, and the percentage of people exiting with a non-cash benefit is still at 75%, has the project done anything to help people obtain a non-cash benefit, right? We would say probably not, right? So question 6C would look a little more closely at information in the APR to look at, okay, what were the percentage of people that had a non-cash benefit at the project start, and what was it at exit? And currently, we're simply offering bonus points for this on this question, unless the committee wanted to entirely do away with or to substitute this for question, I think it's question 6B, which looks at the percentage of people that had a non-cash benefit at project exit. That is an option, or we could see how we do this year with simply using this as another bonus question. And we're proposing, if we do use a bonus, proposing 1 bonus point for each 5% increase between project entrance and project exit. So for example, to a maximum of 5 points. And so if a project had 40% of the people starting with the non-cash benefit, and at exit, they had 75%, you know, that would be what, 75 minus 40 is 35 points, and they would earn 5 bonus points.
Hey, Lloyd, we have a
yes.
question on the table.
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes, Lord, given the population we serve, who have, who've been chronically homeless and have a lot of housing barriers, and also oftentimes lack of education or just vocational training or rehab, they will find employment. However, it's hard for them sometimes to sustain that employment. So how do we, is there a way to, because it almost as if, if they don't have it versus they're leaving versus if they had it, but they couldn't sustain it, how does that question kind of get at what you're trying to, not you, but the organization, to try to figure out whether or not we're making any inroads there?
So I would, we're not proposing changing the question around employment income. The proposal is simply to look at non-cash benefits.
Yeah, but even so, even with connecting them with SSR, SSDI, oftentimes that is not an overnight process and could take up to a year or longer to
Mhm.
actually establish. So, you know, I'm just throwing it out there in terms of whether or not, how does that information informs the evaluation of whether or not a person who's been housed and their connection to that, because it could be in the process. It could be, I'm just throwing this out there in terms of being able to assist them applying for that. It hasn't been approved, but given the nature and also the target population we're serving.
Well, yeah, specifically on employment income, the standard for permanent supportive housing projects is only 20% of people. And some projects meet that standard, some don't. But it is a continuing, you know, it is also one of the system performance measures that HUD looks at for the entire COC. So it remains an important measure for our entire system, and needs to be considered as well, I think, for the individual projects. The standard for rapid rehousing is somewhat higher. And I think what we're trying to do with the proposed addition would be to recognize that, you know, some projects may have significant percentages of people already receiving a non-cash benefit at project entry, and so 6C would reward bonus points or award bonus points for projects that perhaps have lower numbers of people. So if I could go through the suggested changes, perhaps, because there's several that we're suggesting. And then we can come back for some additional discussion. And I'd like to also have discussion offline in between now and early December. Certainly welcome additional comments. So the question 6C is a new proposal. Similarly, question 7B is also considering the increase in the percentage of participants who had health insurance between project start and project exit, or annual assessment. So it's a similar also proposing similar bonus points for that.
Lloyd, I think we have another question out here. Tracy, did you have another question, or was it still up from the last time?
My apologies, I forgot to lower my hand. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
Well, Lloyd, before you continue, I did have a question.
Yes.
At any point, because what I was looking for was what type of bonuses we offer to the projects who are helping, say, with landlords and things like that. Right now, the housing market has shot through the roof for rental services and things like that. So what are we doing, I guess, bonus-wise to kind of help the points on some of the projects that are having troubles with, you know, landing a good landlord to get some people in their homes due to the economic, you know, strengths that's happening right now?
There's not specific bonus points here relative to recruiting landlords. The city is in the process of developing a new contract with a agency to do more around landlord recruitment for the entire COC, for all of our projects. Questions 8A and 8B continue to award points for the percentage of housing move-ons in the case of PSH projects, and question 8B awards additional bonus points for exits without housing subsidies for people who are in rapid rehousing projects. the challenge I would say is that the annual performance report, which is their primary tool for evaluating performance, does not provide any information about how an organization might have worked with landlords or specific landlord recruitment. Then a couple other questions. I discussed these with in some email dialogue with Jonathan, the chair. There was some thought that question 11B around the percentage of people with mental health or substance use disorders could help us perhaps more finely target or look at the vulnerability of people who are being admitted into our permanent supportive housing projects. We've had continuing discussions, I think, on the committee as to how we should evaluate who is admitted into projects and whether we should through our by name list processes. Since we are looking at the potentially, if that question is approved on 11B, if we do that for PSH, the suggestion is that we add a companion question 11D to look at the percentage of people who had health insurance at start for project entry and consider that kind of a vulnerability. And the scale, I will say that the bonus points, or the not bonus points, but the actual scoring is based on the average that the APR for the all of our rapid rehousing projects scored at roughly the 75% level. So projects would get full credit if they're meeting that COC wide average. So that's another new question to consider. Also question 14A and 14B similarly look at the vulnerability, so kind of assessing the additional need of people based on the non-cash, the percentage of people that don't have non-cash benefits at entry. Another big question, I think the other one that we really want to get some feedback from the committee on based on the Housing First implementation is how we include Housing First implementation in the COC evaluation. Each of them in the two in 2023. Initially, we were thinking of simply taking a percentage of the overall scoring on the Housing First assessment tool that is provided to us by, for example, February 28th or March 15th by the evaluation teams. That is still an option if it's the committee's will. Further discussion within our team with my manager Collins suggested that we talked about perhaps not having any score for the Housing First assessment in this evaluation tool, allowing that to stand on its own, and that we simply remove any consideration of the Housing First assessment. The concern is particularly around inter-rater reliability, right? If we have, for example, 5 teams evaluating 5 implementations of Housing First in Durham, and each team is different, more than likely, even though they're asking the same questions or considering kind of the same information, we're not sure that the inter-rater reliability between those 5 teams would be consistent. And so it might just be better to allow that Housing First assessment to stand alone. as hopefully a guide or a tool that the projects can use to hopefully improve Housing First implementation, and but not make it part of our either the first semi-annual evaluation that we use to consider whether we should put projects on probation, and certainly that we use in the second evaluation to rank projects for funding in the annual COC competition. So I think that's at least the recommendation that Colin and I are making. If the committee feels otherwise, we can certainly recommend that a percentage of the score be included. So those are the recommendations that we invite feedback on in the last few moments. I believe, Shay, this is the last item on today's agenda, or is it not?
We actually had a pretty steady agenda for today.
Okay.
After this vote, we actually had a few more things to talk about, but yeah, this is okay. We at least handled majority of it.
Okay. Are there any particular questions or any feedback about any of the suggested additions? We're not really, well, as well as the deletion of component 5 on Housing First implementation. Interested in getting some feedback. Again, would like some feedback.
I have Sally who wants to provide some feedback or may have a question. Sally?
Thank you. And Lloyd, you may have said this earlier. It sounds like that you're really focused right now on these proposed changes. And did you say that there's an opportunity to review the existing measures that are not proposed to be changed at some point?
There is certainly, yeah. If committee members want to make proposed, changes either to the scoring levels or to the, to proposing to delete any of the proposals or any of the measures that are in here. Certainly we can entertain that for both permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. If the particular measure is one that was approved by the COC in March, the performance level that we have adjusted, I think already was, but it is adjusted to the performance level that the COC approved. I don't know if that was helpful or addresses your question, but yes, I'm open to all comments and suggestions.
So Sally, we did have a task from last meeting for us to review these scorecards and evaluation tools and give updates and feedback on it if we wanted to make changes. Now, any of the committee members who did have the opportunity to view and come up with your own ideas or what you would like to change, if you would like to submit those items or make a comment, by all means. But if not, I do believe what Lloyd is saying is that if the committee would like to put up a motion to approve the current changes that we have highlighted in red, some of the things that we've talked about here today. If we would like to implement those changes, we can. I guess the question would be, Lloyd, if we implement the changes here today, after we do that, will we have another period to update the tools or scorecards or evaluations again?
So at this point, I'm asking for feedback, kind of a sense of the committee, whether some of these questions should be added. And then based on the feedback I receive between now and probably the end of November, the plan would be to submit a final draft of the scorecard for the committee's adoption at the December meeting, and the tool that is approved by the committee at the December meeting would be the one that we use for the 2 evaluations we do in 2023 of our COC funded rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing projects. So what's in red are proposed additions. I'd like some feedback in discussion, whether people like some of these additions or if people, I mean, we can, I know we only have about 8 minutes left. If there's suggestions for not including any of these or including all of them, we can certainly take them one at a time today or in the December meeting, as well as any other suggestions for changing anything else in the scorecard that anybody wants to make.
All right, so at this time, if anyone would like to make a motion, either agreeing to some of the changes or asking for more time in December to review, we could definitely, open the table up to that. I feel like we might need some more information surrounding some of the things that are changing. I think a lot of the time that we spent today was kind of spent on the top half, and we didn't get to really dive into this portion. So it could be some more conversation around it. And I think we got the information just a few days ago, so it may not been enough time. But if it is enough time and we're ready to go, by all means, the floor is open for a motion.
I propose that we have a little bit more time to review these. As adult learners, sometimes we're visual, sometimes we need to read over things. So I would suggest we have a little bit more time to review it. Excuse me.
Well, that's
I'll
certainly
tell you what,
fine. I
we
mean,
don't need a vote on that.
Right,
To have more
right.
time to approve it. So I'm kind of with you on this, Tracy. I wanted more time to kind of look at this and dive into it. So if everyone is okay with holding this off until December, so that we have a little bit more time to review and maybe highlight some stuff that we might want to update and change. But is that okay, Lloyd?
That's certainly fine. Just so that the copy we present or the draft we present in December is kind of close to final, and we don't need to delay final approval until January. It would be helpful to get a sense of the committee by the end of November as to which, if any of these new changes committee members are supportive of. I'm particularly interested, currently I'm deleting component 5 on Housing First implementation completely. It would be good to have a sense from the committee today, if possible, just not a motion necessarily, but informally, is there some consensus, or people could put maybe in the chat whether you think component 5 should still stay in some form?
Well, I thought, given that we're trying to implement this other process where we're learning from other agencies, other COCs, some of that information could help inform future decisions around Housing First. I don't know if it necessarily, I don't think we need to duplicate having it here, as well as probably having that other information that we're trying to gather from the site visits and other things. But I mean, again, it could be something we look at and compare and contrast in the future regarding if the COC felt as though we gathered enough information to see whether or not it's being documented, developed in practice throughout our projects.
Okay. Are there other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just writing in the chat that I'm actually okay with removing this portion of the evaluation if we can capture it or ensure that the new process captures this information. That way it's not like Tracy said, duplicative, when doing the process. So if we're removing it, is there a way that we can confirm if it does show up in the new tool?
Well, yeah, I mean, these questions are taken from the Housing First Assessment tool that we'll be using for the site visits and the, it's just a question of whether we want to bring that in, bring this results of that into this evaluation tool that we're using again to consider placing projects on probation or recognizing outstanding performance, as well as the ranking. And so I think, you know, we'll at least propose that we not consider it, although certainly the entire committee will be presented all of the evaluations of our projects on their Housing First implementation that the evaluation teams do, and certainly want that to be a key consideration for how our projects are performing.
Okay.
So yeah, so if people could get me their comments about the proposed additions by the end of November, I would appreciate that very much.
That'll be perfect. So we'll look out for that email. And Lloyd, this has been sent out to everyone, right? Already. I know I have my copy, but I didn't know if everyone else had theirs. So
I believe it has. I believe Jonathan sent it out, but
Okay.
if committee members did not send it out. And Sally, since you're not a member of the committee, you probably did not receive it, but you know, if you have interest in making comments about it, I'm happy to send it to you as well.
I think I have it, thanks.
Okay.
all right. So I would just need, and looking at the time here, we're literally 1 minute to it. So I would just need someone to help us and get this meeting adjourned today. Do I have a motion for adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you so much for that, Shantae. So if there's someone out there who can do a second.
I second, Shay.
All right, perfect. So this meeting today was very informative. Thank you guys for your time and your questions.
Everyone.
And we'll look forward to talking to you in December. But please send your feedback to Lloyd by the end of the month so that he can get it all inputted and ready for us in December.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank
Happy
you. Have a great
happy
day.
Thanksgiving. Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you. Take care.
Happy holidays. Bye.